All right. Well, welcome everyone to this installment of the Graybeard Talks Geospatial. This is Bruce Buxton. I'm the Graybeard. I'm here in a rainy, cold Pennsylvania. I'm hoping to have better weather over the weekend. As you can see, I'm joined today by Pat Hohl. Pat is another influencer from the world of geospatial. I'm glad to have him on. Maybe, Pat, you could say hi and introduce yourself.
It's great to be here, Bruce. Thanks for the invitation. Really glad to be able to share with the community. I appreciate the kind of things that you're doing to help build community in geospatial and take the conversation forward.
Excellent. Well, good. I'm glad to have you here. One of the things that I need to is a little housekeeping. I am doing this. I am streaming this live on LinkedIn, but also doing a Clubhouse room at the same time. So if you'd rather join on Clubhouse, you can go in there and look in the Geospatial Connections Club, and there will be a room called the Graybeard Talks Geospatial with Pat Hohl, and you can just tune in there. It's a non-interactive room, no hand raising or anything like that. It'll just be listening to the stream, the live stream as it comes. So I just want to point everybody there. If you'd like to go there and listen, you can. After the live stream is over, after I close out with Pat, I'll go ahead and open the mics in the Clubhouse room, and we'll have a bit of a Q&A and conversation there. If you so desire, if you're around. So anyway, so this ought to be a really interesting conversation. Pat is the Director of Electric Industry Solutions, and he hails from the East Coast. I don't come from the East Coast, but I live here now. But Pat, tell us just a little bit about where you come from.
Sure, I saw on your LinkedIn profile, Bruce, that you are in Gettysburg, and I grew up not too far from there, in the suburban area of Philadelphia. Went to school at Drexel University, just about 5 blocks down the street from the Pico Energy headquarters, which may have had something to do with my ultimate career choice.
Yeah, I gather you went to work for Pico right out of college. Is that right?
I did. Yep.
Yeah.
I like to talk to college seniors and high school seniors and encourage them with their career choices and remind them that if you play your cards right, you can have a job offer in your pocket in January. And that's what I did. Just started right into T&D after having spent a co-op period in a nuclear power plant and then also in T&D.
Oh, that's nice. So I raised 5 kids of my own, and I have one two that are still in college. And it's funny that there's a little known skill there, a little known path to getting a job that I don't think a lot of kids really grasp the idea of, planning ahead and getting some experience before you get in the job market. And sounds like you did a pretty good job of that.
It was a great program. It was one of the reasons I selected that program. It was a 5-year program to get through engineering, but I graduated with a 1.5 years of experience and a job offer in my pocket.
That's nice. That's
worked out pretty well.
And so what part of Philly did you grow up in?
Southeastern Pennsylvania, Delaware County.
Okay.
Glenwood, Glen Olden, Norwood.
Okay, right up on the 95 corridor there.
Right on I-95.
Right on I-95. That was one of the places I used to drive through for work all the time, and I just used to think, God, it's so foreign to where I grew up in Utah. It's just a whole different world. So, did you have any hobbies growing up? Anything that you did that would interest other people?
I've always loved cars. I'm very mechanical. And so I'm at a point in life where I'm enjoying restoring some older cars. My brother and I have a joint project. We're just finishing up a 68 Ford Torino Fastback with a 390. And after that, ready to go, still stuck half in the mud as a 72 International Scout, kind of like a Bronco. That's my next big project.
Oh, that's cool. Those are both neat older vehicles. That'd be fun. Is it a chop? Do you chop the top off this Scout so you just have a kind of a convertible there in California?
Well, it's got a removable top, but I like survivors, Bruce, and I like to put them back in original condition.
Yeah, well, that's nice. Well, good. Well, everybody needs a hobby. So that sounds like a real fun hobby for you. Yeah. Well, okay. We said you worked for Esri, but you didn't get there just right out of college. In fact, you went and you worked for Pico. Where else have you worked in your career?
My brother and I moved to California back in the late 80s, and I ended up at the city of Riverside, California. Now, Riverside is a city that has an electric and water utility. They're at about 120,000 customers right now. So I started off there as an engineer, and I had not been doing that very long when my my supervisor came to me one day and said, I need to offload this GIS project. Would you be willing to take a citywide $12 million implementation and run with it? And I said, yes. So that started a career path for me. I wrote a couple books and have spent a lot of time around GIS, but I went on to do field operations. I ran field operations for 8 years at the city, was the engineering manager, ended up in executive leadership before I retired. And it was just a natural transition for me to take that experience and work in Redlands.
Yeah, that's a neat career path. I mean, one of the things that companies like Critigen would like to have are people who have utilities operations experience, who also want to do some consulting in GIS, and they just don't come along very often. You know, you don't get those kind of people coming in the job market very often. Sounds like that you stuck in there a long time before you actually made the jump to Esri.
I did. I had the ability to retire at 55 from the city, and it worked out very well for me. And I had been driving, I'd literally been driving back and forth past Redlands for 20 years. Many people predicted I would end up there someday, and they were right.
Well, they were reading you correctly, I guess. That's good. All right. Well, let's. One of the things I'd like to just touch on is just, tell me a little bit about your role at Esri. Tell me what it is that you do, and why it should interest the people that are listening today.
Well, one of the way that I think about my role there is really threefold. I have a responsibility to educate and inform our users and the industry, but also to inspire them about what is possible, what's coming, to look down the road and think about how GIS can be applied to the current industry issues that are at hand, and there are plenty of them. And then right alongside with that, to build the community. I think especially in this last year, we've all been yearning for more connection. And it'll be one of my focuses this year to try to build more community, especially in that mid-market segment of municipal utilities and the smaller organizations out there.
I'm curious, when you say that, when you say you're anxious to build community, tell me, when you think of that, when you're thinking about that word, what are you thinking of? What does it mean to you?
Well, let's talk nuts and bolts. So when we had our IMGIS conference in the fall, one of the most popular elements of that conference was our special interest groups, which were Zoom meetings with people that got together. We prepared some polls. I prepared some topical information, but the real juice was in getting the user community together, providing a forum for people to ask questions, to make connections offline, and to be able to share the kind of things that they're doing, because most of us in the industry are all facing very similar problems.
So if I can kind of read into what you're saying that where you get professionals that have some of the same responsibilities together in a way that they wouldn't normally get together to share ideas, best practices, things like that. When you say community, that's kind of what you're referring to. That's
right. And if we can think about the kind of conversations that we have at events, at live conferences, you go to Distribute Tech, all of the hallway conversations that you would have with your peers. I'm trying to facilitate new ways to do that in this new environment.
Now let's go down that rabbit hole. You opened it, so let's go down there. What is the future of in-person conferences versus virtual conferences? What's all the scuttlebutt at Esri? What are you guys saying? Well, you don't have to tell me privately if you can't, but maybe you could invite Jack in and he could let us know.
Yeah, I think it's no secret that on the immediate horizon, our events are virtual, and I think most events are. But of course, there's an expectation that we will reopen at some point. I find it very difficult to think that we're going to drop this virtual piece anytime soon. When you just look at the force multiplier, how many more people from an organization can participate and get the value. I approved a lot of travel requests over the years for people to attend conferences, and many times there was only a session or two that they were really interested in, or that I was really interested in. And if I could get that kind of education without having to send somebody to Oklahoma, I would do it. So I think the virtual piece as a component is here to stay for a long time. Esri's watching down the horizon. We will be part of the community as we come back, but I really couldn't tell you when that will be.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we think a lot about it on the vendor end of things, right? So one of it might not surprise you to know that we kind of look at it and say, you know, how much value did we really get from that in the end, right? But then there's this community thing that you brought up. How do you create community and connections that are important and that are helping professionals to be the best they can be if we don't get together in a group? And so I think there's a lot of stuff to be fleshed out yet.
I definitely would agree with that.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay. Well, so let's talk about it. I'd like to talk about marketing. That's big aspect of what you're doing is you're kind of coming up with Esri's marketing strategy for your market, for what you're doing. So talk to me a little bit about your approach to marketing and how you see it and why you think it's important for Esri and then for the community of Esri users like us.
Sure. Well, I'm an engineer by background. I'm not a marketer by background. So forgive me if I take a very programmatic approach to the subject. But today, everything literally is digital. There really isn't anything other than that. And for me, the clarity of the message is really the foundation of marketing. And I don't want that to have a negative connotation. Marketing, it serves the company that's producing the marketing, but it also serves the customer because it enables the customer to get the information that they need when they are ready for a solution. They want to have solid information to understand solutions, to be able to communicate that in their organization. So I think it's essential to tie the value of what it is that you're marketing, right? And in the utility, that value typically has to get tied to some kind of a KPI and the things that are important in the organization. We all know that electric utilities have in their mission statements cost-effective, reliable service to serve the community, but year over year, those priorities shift. And there may be a focus on customer satisfaction or on reliability or emergency response. So it's important to tie your message in, and whether you're at a partner company marketing or whether you're the head of a division or operating in your department, trying to market your ideas and your proposals within the company, I think it's really critical to crystallize your message. I would say even write it down, and I know you're a fan of that.
Yeah, we do some similar things with our personnel. Is come up with these personal value statements. What is it you're providing when you're as a consultant? What do you provide to your clients? What do you provide to the overall world around you? And I think it's really important to clarify your mind on how you show up every day and what you show up doing. And I think it's really a good concept. So how do you align? Like, I'm curious, how do you stay up with trends? How do you stay current with what's important to the utilities? Since you're the one that's trying to align those messages, what methods are you using to stay current with what the market's doing?
Well, that's a very insightful question. I read a lot. I write a lot, but I also read a lot as well. And talking to people, is really the best way to put your ear to the ground and find out what the priorities are out there. And I love what you said about crystallizing your message. In terms of marketing, you really have to be able to be clear on the value that you're providing, what problem it is that you are solving, and how you're actually doing that. And utilities are rather risk-averse organizations for the most part.
Very.
Most organizations don't want to be on the bleeding edge, and so I always heard it said, we're going to steal or borrow the best ideas that we can find. We're going to imitate the best. So that's the thing to watch, is who's leading the way, who's doing the best, and see what they are doing. And oftentimes you learn that from stories, success stories about what they have done.
Well, that's interesting, because you're segueing, maybe on purpose, maybe not. But I think one of the things that I've known you for over the past year is we worked together on a case study for one of our successful clients. And I became aware that you had this role inside of Esri, especially in the utilities business. You have this role of coming up with case studies, user success stories, and eventually getting all that stuff into your Esri ebooks, which is a delivery content system for you guys. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that. Is that when you say success stories, are you talking about the interaction you have as you build those marketing pieces, those ebooks?
Sure, that's part of it. But my experience within the utilities, many utilities want to know, well, what are my peers doing? When I worked at the city of Anaheim, or the city of Riverside, we were always interested in what Anaheim was doing, what Pasadena was doing. And so finding those kind of stories and reading about the success of your peers is very enabling, not only to paint a vision of what's possible, but to help convince the decision makers that it's a reasonable step to take and that other people are doing it.
Yeah.
I want to make a short plug here, Bruce, to everybody who's listening. Please bring me your Esri customer success stories. Whether you are a customer or a business partner, I would love to have that conversation with you.
And tell me if someone comes to you tomorrow and says, "Hey, I heard you on the Graybeard Talks Geospatial," how would you handle that? What would be your workflow, just to get everybody primed?
That's a great question. Well, speaking of workflows, I find that it's very useful to focus on a single workflow. Many times people have a very broad vision of what they're doing, and attention spans are short these days. People want to get the information that they're looking for quickly. So I find the best case studies focus on a single workflow. And like any good story, there has to be something at stake. Have you ever heard of the hero's journey?
I use it every day. Yeah, it's an important part of what I do. Yeah.
So the hero's journey, for those that are not familiar with it, is a storyline that across human culture, most stories follow. You have the ordinary world, and then some problem, some call to adventure. It's followed by a journey, and ultimately a resolution. And that makes a good case study. And we think of it in 3 points. What is the business challenge? What's the real problem that you're trying to address? Standing up a new environment isn't a great case study, but standing up a new environment to solve some particular business problem is the start of a good story. What's the challenge? What is the solution? And then finally, what were the results of that? I would like to really key in on the value to the organization. I will tell you, one of the sticky points of telling those stories is that as commercial companies, we ask for permission to use those stories in a commercial manner. By definition, that's what we do. And sometimes that's difficult, especially with utilities that have large legal teams.
Yeah, you know that. Last year, Curtigen was involved in not last year, I guess a year before, two fairly high-profile utility network implementations that both solved business problems. And one of those organizations couldn't talk enough about it, and the other organization, couldn't be quieter about it. So it depends on the organization and what their perception of risk is, I suppose. What are you proudest of? Like your output, your ebooks, what have you got that you think everybody should look at and be happy and really look at and think, oh, there's a lot of value here for me?
Well, I'd hope you could say that about every ebook, Bruce. I hope you could say that about every article of mine. I write a lot of blogs on Energy Central. And in there, I try to take something interesting, something from my personal experience, and put a new spin on a challenge or a business problem. And many people have written to me and said, oh, I haven't heard about that for a long time, or I really appreciated that. That was a great quote from somebody I hadn't heard of in a long time. And I'm very proud of that feedback. My blogs on Energy Central are well over 100,000 views, and I take that as a wonderful compliment. So to anybody who's reading those blogs, please accept my thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Everybody can just kind of close your ears and look at something else, because I'm going to make a personal appeal and pitch to Pat right now, is that use the publisher function on LinkedIn and create some short form blogs. Like, go back and look at some of your most successful long form blogs that you've done, say for Energy Central, and use that publisher function in LinkedIn to create some short versions of those same blogs. Because I think one of my things this year, and I started the year by doing this in January, is getting groups of people together and saying, how do we create better geospatial content on LinkedIn? Because I believe LinkedIn is a platform that provides us with an awful lot of opportunity for professional networking and professional development in a way that no other social media platforms provide for. But the problem is there's an overabundance of sales messaging on LinkedIn as opposed to content that really matters to individual people. So I'm really on a mission to create content that really helps people to do their jobs. That's why I do this live stream, and that's why I post some of the things I post, is so that I can provide that content that really helps people do their jobs or deepen their network connections with other people. So I hope you take that challenge, and if you want to investigate that even more, you can talk to me and I can help you out with it.
All right, good. I'll take you up on that, Bruce. I used to work for a guy, and he said, if you don't have problems, you don't need engineers. And so I think I tend to come at things like that. I look for problems. I'm not a salesperson.
Yeah.
I like to solve problems, whether that's fixing an old car or improving emergency response. Those things it scratches an itch in me, and I enjoy problem solving. And just one more thought on the stories here.
Yeah.
As a customer, organizations came to me and said, we'd like to do a case study on the work that you've done. And I personally always took that as a compliment. I viewed that as a career enhancing move of sorts, because if a third party is going to come along and tell the story of the good work that I had done, that's good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
As an executive, I cherish that even more, because if I could put a third party case study in front of my board and they could tell the story of the good work that my team had done, that carried a lot more weight than me addressing the board and telling them about it.
Yeah, that's just, it's crucial that I think people understand the weight that carries. Public opinion and the way people see you makes so much of a difference in your career and in your overall feeling of success. So I couldn't agree with you more. If you have a case study, if you have a success story, get with Pat. He's easy to contact. The other I was going to mention too, Pat, I don't know if I told you this, but last year, that first virtual UC we had in 2019, I guess it was. No, was it 2019? No, 2020 was the first.
20.
So 2020, we had that virtual UC, and we spent a lot of time on our computers, watching people come through and either request a meeting or not request a meeting. But anyway, every one of our customers that came by our virtual booth, we asked the question, do you like what you're seeing from us in the marketplace? Do you like the messages we're giving? And to the person, and I mean, I'm honestly, to the person, everybody said, we want to see more stories. We don't really care what you think about your solution. We don't really care what marketing message you have about your solution. We want to hear stories where people succeeded using your help or using Esri's solution or whatever it might be. And so we're doubling down on that, trying to create stories that tell our potential clients, here's where we've succeeded. Here's how we've done things in the marketplace. So I think you and I are very much aligned on what is needed out there in terms of information for the marketplace. I think we're very much aligned. Let's just talk at the end here, because I think we need to wrap up. But at the end, I'm curious about trends in the market. I'd like to have a crystal ball that would let me see way out there in the future and be able to see what are all the trends. So I'm wondering if you have that crystal ball for me today. You can share with me what you're hearing from your frontline people or from some of the utilities that you're working with to create these stories, these messages. What kinds of things should we be looking for? What kinds of things are on the horizon?
Well, there's no shortage of things on the horizon, Bruce. We're seeing a lot of activity and interest around better analytics and better data structures, improved digital twins to model the world that we're in. And of course, renewables, sustainability, reliability improvement, these are all hallmarks of the business. But one thing jumps out to me that's very current and happening right now, and that is the anticipated infrastructure spending from the federal government. That's expected to be about $2 trillion with a T. And the federal government is preparing to dump money on the electric grid, water systems, roads, bridges, communications infrastructure, electric vehicle charging, electrification of existing sectors of the economy. All of these things have just enormous implications for the utility. I was just chatting with my wife about this over lunch, and she said, hey, how would you like to be working at the city knowing that that dump was coming and that people are going to want to know, what are you going to do? how are you going to do it? How are you going to engineer all that? How are you going to build it? How are you going to operate it better? It's a staggering amount of work that is headed our way, and we're going to need the very best systems that we have to help manage that work and prioritize it.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more. When you use the word dump, I mean, that sounds like what the government's preparing to do, is just, just dump a bunch of money into that market. And you've got to believe in this new digital world we live in that so much of that money is going to be going toward digital transformation types of projects. Not just are we going to build a new substation, not are we going to build redundancy in the electric grid, but how are we going to manage that whole thing digitally when so much of our operations has been done either on paper or on antiquated digital systems, right?
Well, you're right. I probably told you this. I think we sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that everybody is at level 9 and they're trying to figure out how to get to level 10.
Yeah.
When in reality, many of the people that I talk to are hoping to get up to level 5 one of these days. And if you read the Biden plan, it does include a very significant emphasis on innovation, which addresses the kind of things that you're talking about. I think there's going to be a high expectation for analytics, for real-time reporting, for community information, so the community knows what is happening around them. And those are just big opportunities for us to do a better job as utilities.
Yeah, before we move on, I wanted to say one more thing, but before we do that, I want to ask everybody who's viewing this right now. We've got a few live viewers. Please put in the chat where you're viewing from. It'd be nice for me to know that you're watching this, and if you have a question for Pat, this would be a really good time to answer it or to ask it. I'm going to bloviate here for a second, but then after that, then there will be an opportunity to ask Pat a question, and I'd love to have you do that if you are so inclined. I do have one thing here. Bruce Taylor was just repping. He's putting something out there on LinkedIn saying, if you have a minute, check out Pat. Do you know Bruce Taylor? He's one of our stars. He's a good man.
Good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. So what I wanted to say in response to what you were talking about, Pat, is, it's really easy when you talk about GIS to default to the past, like to default to where GIS came of age, which was in that corner of the engineering department, right? Or in that corner of the planning department, right? Where it's used mainly as a map to get people rolling in the right direction or to get their thinking in the right direction, when really what we're talking about in terms of digital transformation and the digitization of the utility is something much different than that. It's much more about how location helps in real-time decision making, for example, or not just planning, but 3D planning for to talk about another thing. It's so much further than the corner of the planning department. And we need to open our minds and expand our understanding of what those spatial analytics could look like in the future and what they could mean for the future of these utilities if they're truly going through a digital transformation. I suppose that you would agree with me on that.
Absolutely. I've been in this business for a long time, and back in the 90s, GIS was a project.
Yes.
That you did in the engineering department, and you converted a lot of literal paper maps into a digital process. It's so much more today, and that's why you'll notice if you look at our messaging, the messaging that we use around utilities for Esri is around this idea of being a comprehensive GIS. It's not just a place to capture your information, but it's also a way to understand it more effectively to get to the kind of analytics that you're talking about.
Yeah. Go ahead, keep going.
Well, and then finally to be able to share that information with others, to put that on a dashboard. And I can tell you, there are managers out there that are pounding desks saying, get me a dashboard so I can keep an eye on this. Give me better analytics so we can prioritize these system improvements. And so there's a lot of people looking for those kind of solutions. And that's where I try to help connect the dots.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of people out there, a whole lot of our customers, our clients who are saying, I want to run my operation from a map. I want to be able to look at this map over coffee in the morning and have an orientation to what's important to me in my day. I want to be able to see all these different disciplines, and they all start with where things are. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of directions you can go with that. The COVID-19 virus and everything that it's brought to us in terms of understanding our world through the location of how the virus is spreading, right? It's just, for a lot of people, that was a revelation. Oh, you can really do that? You can really understand that deeply what's happening geographically with the virus. So I think we just have this wonderful opportunity right now in the market to really deepen and broaden how not maps, but how geospatial technology is used to not only visualize where things are, but to use that spatial data to make better decisions and to visualize other kinds of things other than just where it is on the map.
It's an amazing journey. Once you catch that vision, then I've seen it over and over in these organizations. Once somebody sees step one, they immediately start thinking about steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, we could do this, we could do that. In organizations that have taken that view that you're espousing, they find applications everywhere. Because as I posted in your LinkedIn question, I would challenge anybody to make a list of the utility things that don't include a location. It really will not take very long because it's a pretty short list.
Right. I mean, when you open your mind to so all the decisions that have traditionally been made without location as a factor, and then you add location, and it increases your efficiency or your effectiveness in making that decision by a factor of 4 or 5. I'm sure that you can come up with all kinds of utility examples of where that's the case.
Yeah, it's very dramatic. And if you look at the way many utility operations have run, they rely on employees that have been around for decades. And they essentially did that in their head. I worked with people that know, if you ask them about the pole at the corner of 5th and Japip, they'll remember it's a 55-footer. They put it in, it's got communications, and it's a buck arm runs across the road. But those people are retiring. Yeah. And so we have to prepare for capturing that information and being able to use it effectively in the field and to use it for analytics, as you suggested. There's just a whole host of applications. And once you catch the vision, there's really no stopping it.
Oh, I'm sorry you brought that up, because it's one of my favorite topics. When you go, because I'm a graybeard, I'm one of the old guys. I might be one of those dudes who actually built part of that water system that's out on the edge of town. And I know exactly where every pipe is. I know where every valve is, every hydrant is. I know exactly when it went in the ground. And I really don't need your map to give me any more context. Just tell me what I need to do and I'll go do it. But you know what, Bruce? Jeremy, who is 2 years out of high school, who needs to do the same thing, next year after you're retired, he doesn't know all that, and he's been living on his cell phone since he was 8 years old. That kid's going to need more, and that's one of my favorite subjects. I think we can't stick our head in the sand and not recognize that is a coming storm for utilities, especially utilities. That's a coming storm for that business.
Sure. Well, whether you're a gray beard or you're a gray goatee, we're what you call a digital immigrant, because we learned this technology over the course of our careers. But Jeremy, in your example, he's a digital native. Yeah. He expects everything to work that way. Yeah. He doesn't have any problem using augmented reality to do his safety training or his job orientation before he heads out for the job. In fact, he really expects it to work that way. And if you tell Jeremy he's got to fill out a piece of paper and put it in make 3 copies and put it in the inbox, it's not going to go well for you.
No, I get it. And that's one of my favorite topics. I need to do something on that, because when I think about it, I just think it just makes so much sense. And I know that there's a lot of utilities that are grappling with that idea, and that's driving an awful lot of the angst that they have about, their digital transformation and starting to work off of their devices rather than off of paper. So, and that's just like the beginning. That's just right at the beginning of what the problem is. Then there's the whole visualization and dashboarding and analytics, the advanced analytics and IoT and real time and all the things that need to happen way out there on the edge, augmented reality. And so there's just so much progress to make, and you guys are right in the middle of it, and it's exciting to see all of that happen.
It's an exciting time. I'm having a lot of fun working on just those problems, Bruce.
That's cool. Well, hey, this has been a fun conversation. I enjoy hearing what Esri's doing in terms of your marketing and plans, and again, I know you as kind of the author of case studies, and so I want everybody to kind of pick up one of your ebooks and take a look and see what they have to offer. If you are in a utility, if you support a utility, these are great resources to see what is the art of the possible, I suppose.
They sure are, and I'll make a quick plug for what you can expect to see coming from us in the next 30 days. Look for a webinar with EOS on high accuracy field location at the end of the month, and then a series next month, starting on the 14th, on field operations, and we'll have an ebook that comes out right about the same time with that, Bruce.
Field operations ebook. It's got to be fun.
Field operations is going to focus on the worker wearing a hard hat.
Excellent. Fantastic.
I've worked with a lot of them, and they have real needs. Sometimes they're a little slow on the uptake on these things, but when you can demonstrate that you can make their world better, it sells itself.
It's less of a problem than it used to be, though. I mean, 10 years ago, you could say that with a straight face. They're a little slow, but I mean, now even the guys who are ready to retire have an orientation to the electronic and digital capture methods or management methods that is staggering compared to what it was a decade ago. So we've made great strides.
That's absolutely true. They're all using navigation on their phones and working on Facebook and buying things on Amazon. Right. They're not as intimidated as they used to be.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay. Any last words before I cut you loose?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Bruce. It's been great to be here. I look forward to the next time, and I will take your advice. I'll look at putting some of those articles on LinkedIn, and I would encourage you to look through some of my content on Energy Central. And if you see something you think is a great fit, let me know.
Okay, good. I'll count you as a convert, and I'll just say to everybody else here too, I'm a real advocate for LinkedIn. I think there's no platform that could do our industry better than LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about selling widgets. I'm talking about, building, high value connections with other industry professionals and providing a lot of professional development opportunities in that setting. So let's work together and make that content all that much better. Pat, it's been a pleasure. Glad you're here today, and look forward to speaking to you next time.
Very good. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you.